I bring Parks and Recreation. Order. Tiff, come in. Tiffany, she's right there. I see Lenny got the mics going. Amy.
Good evening, Mr. Jackson, council members. The first item on the agenda is discussion of request from the Parks and Recreation Department to apply for a PARD grant for renovations to Short Central. Beth, if you don't mind putting up some of the slide. Before we jump into this, I'm going to ask Mr. Slatton to share some information that he has regarding this project.
We got that.
Good evening. So Amy is going to talk to you about this project and a potential funding source for it, which is the Parks and Recreation Development Funds. But in having conversations with a member of our legislative delegation, it is possible that we won't need to use these funds because of other funds that may be available that he's not been able to necessarily commit yet, but would be very helpful in moving the project forward and doing it in a more comprehensive way. But until we get verification that those funds are available, I still would like to, as Amy is going to request, move forward with this application for the PARD funds. So just understand that if you decide to move forward and council blesses it on Thursday night, we'll make application, but it's possible that we won't need to use these funds since there will be other monies available. So,
And can we use these funds for something else?
potentially, yes. Yes.
Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion.
Oh,
Let Amy tell you what the project.
And I'm sure most of you are familiar with this project. This project is being championed by Summerville Dream. The screen there in front of you shows you kind of the project site, which is really Short Central in its entirety. On the end down where the Christmas tree display typically is, you'll see there will be created a little stage, a pergola, a lot of landscaping. Beth, if you'll go to the next slide for me. There'll be some created landscape down Short Central. The parking spaces will be realigned there for the handicap spaces. You can go to the next one, Beth. You're fine. And then on the other end of Short Central, right there by the parking garage, you'll see that almost triangle of red area. That's that little area will be reimagined as well. If you go to the next slide, it just shows it from the top down. So you can see that space again. And go to the next one. So there, where it says T Pavilion, that'll be a little kiosk, and then a small kind of pocket park, if you will. Steve Doninger from Dream is here tonight. So if you guys have very specific questions, he can answer those as well. My understanding is that currently Revere is doing construction documents for this project. Once those are complete, we will bring those back to you guys to approve those before any of the project gets started. A lot of the labor is being donated for this project. So most of these funds are going to be used just to purchase the materials. And then if you have any questions, I can answer those. But as Mr. Slatton said, the action item for this is on the Finance Committee tonight. What we're requesting is that we apply for the Parks and Recreation Development Grant for a project for $93,750. That would be $75,000 reimbursed to the town through the PARD, and then the town's match, which would be $18,750.
Short Central there that runs from Atlantic Street on up to Parsons.
No, sir. Short Central is the street that runs right here, right on the other side of the parking garage, going down past Four Greens down to the end of Tolucci's. Yes, sir.
And that's, you said about 95,000 is the whole project cost?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We don't need a vote. It's already on the agenda.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The second item on the agenda tonight, I gave you each a flyer. It's a project that we're calling Level Up Somerville. And this is would be a potential computer lab at the Rollins Edwards Community Center. I know you all are familiar with that facility. When you come in, if you go to the right, there's 3 multi-purpose rooms there. What we'd like to do is take one of those multi-purpose rooms and convert it into a STEM lab. It would have 10 fully equipped computers. This would just open up a lot of programming opportunities for us. From STEM programs to music programs to esports. I mean, you name it, there's a lot of different opportunities. We estimate that each computer station would cost us around $5,000, so a total of $50,000. We're not asking for any funds for this project. I do believe that we would be able to find sponsorships for each of these stations. So today I'm just wanting to introduce the project to you, make sure if you guys have any concerns, questions, I can answer those and just get your blessing to pursue potential sponsorships for this. Another great thing about this project is that it will help us reach teens. We believe that we'll be able to get a lot more of teens in our building with this type of programming than what we're offering currently.
When do you plan on starting this?
As soon as we can identify some sponsors.
Great idea. Thank you. Did you come up with this idea?
No, it was actually one of my staff members, Brandon Yeager, who is the manager at the Rollins Edwards Community Center. There are other recreation departments across the state that do have similar facilities and programs. We'd be able to partner with them to be able to do virtual tournaments, other things like that. So he's been working on this for a little while. We just got fiber in our building, which allows us to work towards this.
Well, tell Brandon, council really appreciates him.
I will indeed.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
I'll call the Planning and Development Committee meeting to order and turn it over to Ms. Jessie.
Good evening. We have only one item on the agenda. It's a request to rezone TMS number 130-1413010 located at 717 and 719 West Fifth North Street, approximately 0.478 acres and owned by Wendy G. and Matthew Keith Taylor from NMX Neighborhood Mixed Use to UCMX Urban Corridor Mixed Use. This is in Council District 1. Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for denial at their meeting on February 24th.
And what was the reason for their denial? What was the reason for their denial?
They felt that due to the adjacent uses, it is directly adjacent to single-family residential in the rear. And then also across the street is the middle school. There's a lot of kids that walk to school there. They didn't feel like the UCMX zoning was appropriate for that area.
I'll make a motion that we send it to full council with a recommendation to deny.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to send the council with a recommendation to deny. Is any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No other opposed?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion adjourned. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jesse.
Okay, well, we'll open up the Public Works Committee meeting.
All right, the first item on the agenda is discussion of North Gum Street Extension by adjacent property owner. This came before council at a public comment period at last council meeting. The property that currently only has access off of Main Street. He is requesting that we give the access to him off of North Gum in that unopened right of way of North Gum Street.
And this is the property owner at 1103
Yes, ma'am.
North Main.
Bonnie,
And-
oh, sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. And he has now annexed into the town,
No, he has not.
but he's,
I am not aware. No,
I
he
mean,
has-
he's told me he would annex, but
Okay.
if we did this, but he hasn't began a process yet.
Correct. He has not. And then another issue is if he has access to North Gum Street, that runs, I guess, north-south. But then the access to the light at near the Home Depot to Berlin G. Myers Parkway, that is private property. And so we had told him that he needed to get permission from that property owner. And I don't know where that stands.
I will say, he has no access from North Main. I'm confused.
He does, but because of the ride-in, ride-out condition near the Dunkin' Donuts,
Yeah,
he says that it's dangerous.
it is. I've met with him and walked this property and, I also met with one of the business owners that's now not, open anymore. That was in that little plaza behind it, but I do think there were discussions. I think we should maybe talk to GW. I would want to know if there was an actual agreement with that owner, that we would not ever do that right away or put that road in.
I'm not sure that it's not. Former council member Christine Sarnick made a while that Johnson wanted to open up North Gum Street the whole way. And the Home Depot folks went, but listen, they were sure that we would not do that. Given the time, curve cut, I don't think it will take.
Is this about the curb cut or is this the North Gum Street extension? Because I think those are two very different considerations. And he wants the curb cut to annex in, which I do believe he actually needs. I think the close proximity with the driveways and the right in, right out, I could see where he would need that. He believes his father was once promised that and it wasn't done, but I don't know. I don't think we could verify any of that when I last checked in the beginning of my term. But I just want to be clear if this is about the curb cut or the North Gum Street extension.
I believe it is only about the curb cuts and this was in his letter. When Ms. Meservey provided a copy of his letter after the council meeting, that was one of the exhibits. And I am not clear if he wants permission for him to construct that, a 22-foot wide, entrance into his property, or if he wants the town to construct that.
Right.
Right.
He wants the town to construct that. That's what
Oh.
he's saying his dad was promised when it
That
was
we
put
would
in.
construct that.
From what I understand, but I would want to clarify that before
Right.
confirming something like that.
Right.
And I have a question. Is he wanting this just for like his, like delivery trucks, or is this is for people that are going to his business back and forth?
I believe it's for people going to his.
So
Well,
if you're
there's a
going to
little
that
more.
business, you're cutting through one of these other developments constantly, going back and forth.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a little bit more to the whole story and situation though than that, I believe. The ingress that he has, it's very narrow and it's within, I think, 30 feet, and don't quote me on that, but it sounds about what I remember of that large, power station that we have right there. Y'all know where I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And so DOT, when, I hate speaking on record about things that I'm not 100% confident on, but I remember our conversations about it. I just don't remember the details. I know that there are some developers that have approached them that want to do some developing on that property. And you can't really do that without egress, and you don't have that right now.
Right.
If we push this through to council, could staff look into it a little more, or has staff already looked into it?
We have already looked into it.
Okay, so if we allowed him to pay for it and put it in the curb cut, that is. Then it doesn't, does it affect us negatively in any way?
Well, it gives the access to North Gum Street, but it opens up him having to use private property to get out of the North Gum Street right of way. And he's saying he hasn't gotten permissions from the adjacent property owners. But when the Earth Fair was developed, they got permissions. You know, they worked together to get whatever, ingress, egress permissions. So before, I wouldn't be comfortable allowing the access, knowing that it's opening, he'll have to use the other
Right.
private property.
I would think that we would go back to him and say, you need to get permission from these private property owners first before we go forward with anything. And it would be nice if he would actually show up at the committee meeting. So if we had any other questions, we could ask him personally.
Mhm.
I thought the town owned that. I thought that road that extended, don't we, Jesse, can we address, is that allowed?
So North Gum Street is a town right of way. However, North Gum Street does not go out to another public right of way.
So
It
the
isn't open.
extension.
So in order to get from North Gum Street to another public right of way, someone would have to go on either the Earth Fair private property or the Home Depot private property, which he would need an ingress egress easement, but with those property owners to allow that
Yeah.
legally, which Home Depot granted to Earth Fair and Earth Fair granted to Home Depot. They have an access easement, but my understanding is he has not been able to get them to agree to give him one. So that's why we're not comfortable
Yeah.
I
granting
agree.
access to
I agree.
to the
Agree with
right
that
of
too.
way.
So, okay, so you're confirming the town of Somerville's ends at North Gum Street. There's not a North Gum Street extension that is already the town of Somerville's.
Unless he's
Access.
referring to this.
It doesn't-
Right.
it doesn't end
Right,
next to the
right.
road.
Okay,
Home Depot is using.
The loop, the loop behind Home Depot and Earth or Whole Foods is basically a private road is what we're
Yes,
saying.
it
We're-
is.
It says North Gum Street on this map, but it's a privately
Right.
owned,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a privately owned road that,
Well, that.
okay.
To another public.
Mhm.
No.
You can't get to Gum Street in that photograph without crossing over somebody else's private property. And you can't cross over that private property without
You're
an
right.
easement or an agreement from that property owner
Right.
to get to Gum Street, even though Gum Street is public.
since this is my district, I mean, I think having a North Gum Street extension would alleviate traffic, and I think it would help people in that shopping center have another way out. I think it'd be beneficial, but since this is my district, why don't I just speak with the owner of the private property and see what their thoughts are, and maybe I'll make a motion that can I say table this for now? Is that allowed at a committee meeting, or do I need to send it to full council?
I don't think we do anything.
Okay,
No.
okay. All right, so that sounds good.
If you
Okay.
want, if you want to make a motion to postpone it until the April committee meeting, you can do that, see who's making progress.
I do know that this gentleman has met with me several times since I became on council, and he has a large file where he's been in communication with lots of people for many, many years before me. So he's persistent and he's trying. I don't want to just not hear this ever again. I think that we should advise him on next steps. And if you tell me that he should go to those property owners, and maybe I can assist and see if there's anything I can help with, but I then would like to make a motion that we postpone till the May. It has to be April. Can we, just to give it May meeting?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a first and a second of postponing this until May committee meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Guys have it.
I think.
Okay, the next
I-
item.
I'm sorry.
You're gonna
You have
recuse
something to
yourself.
add?
No,
Yes, it's about the quick claim for a portion of the right of way on South Pine Street at 303 West Richardson Avenue.
I'd like to recuse myself from this, please.
Okay.
This came to the committee several years ago. I think it was 2016, and then a plat needed to be prepared, and so one had got prepared, but it showed additional quit claim on of right of way on the West Richardson Avenue side. So it was brought to the committee a few months ago, and it was decided to wait until we get the new plat, and that new plat has come in and it's currently under review. But it is, what's on the exhibit right there, just showing that portion, about 0.12 acres on South Pine Street.
Mm-hmm.
And we are comfortable, staff's comfortable with the quick claim.
With
We're
quick claiming
fine.
that?
Yes.
I'll move to send to full council with a recommendation for approval.
Okay, and I guess I'll second that.
All
So
right.
we'll send that to full, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay.
Sending it forward.
Great. The next item on the agenda is the resident's request for a quick claim of the side street right of way at 105 Noisette Row. And this area is, you can see it highlighted in that exhibit. It's 40-foot wide right of way. It's about 4,300 square feet, which is about 1/10 of an acre. What has happened when the Noisette Row subdivision was created, there was that parcel at 105 Noisette Row, that's about 2 acres, 1.7 acres, that had the potential of being subdivided. So we didn't want to, landlock that and have it. We needed to provide some right of way to allow for access to that future parcel. But now that property has been purchased and one single family home is being constructed on it. They are in the process of building, and the amount of people that just park in that right of way and then just come up the driveway that they have is just becoming bothersome. And so this is a request to quit claim a portion of it. Will allow for need to have the drainage and any utilities have proper easements for that. Because there are some drainage and utilities that run there. But otherwise, I don't see the need for the town to keep that full width of a right of way.
Is that the property owner's only access to their land?
Yes, it is.
So well, that means they're already using it.
Mhm.
Would it be the standard 25-foot right away, or do you know, or does it?
Or we could just quit claim it after, the portion. I'm assuming we would get a survey and know there's already improvements in there. I think I have another exhibit.
There's already improvements in where on that?
In the Noisette Row
Oh.
right away, there's just a radius stub out. And then the kiosk for the neighborhood is on that corner. So, there is a wide, 22-foot wide pavement stub out, it comes at the end of the radius, but then it goes to just a narrow 12-foot wide driveway that's, gravel that goes back into the property.
Okay, so that's all gravel right now.
Yes, and the property owners are here tonight. I don't want to put them on the spot, but if you have any questions or they have some pictures for you to let you know more.
And that would just be, we wouldn't be maintaining it in the future, right?
We wouldn't be maintaining it.
And make a motion to move it to full council with approval.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion to move to full council and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it.
And then last item on the agenda is discussion of selling town property TMS 14404090011 at the corner of Boone Hill Road and Hudson Drive. The owner of the adjacent gas station and restaurant at the back has contacted me. They are interested in possibly purchasing that. They would like to add parking. He said to have another more parking area, because right now they just park and it's rutted up, and they were just interested. that
I'd like to
process.
postpone this, Madam Chairwoman, to, just before we discuss or send it to council with selling, I think this area or this, land may provide an opportunity for a future, intersection improvements. And I think for the time being, it might be a shame or missed opportunity if we don't at least explore that before we sell the land. So I'd just like to postpone this until we can do some more exploration into some intersection improvements at that.
I agree with you.
I agree.
It looks like we've got some improvements that we need to discuss in the future, and this is a great area for expanding and improvement. So is there some type of, is he using some of this land now to park on?
Yes.
We're allowing him to do that?
There's an access that goes from the relocated Hudson Drive to his property across the town property. So there's that access, so they're using.
Right.
I guess.
Okay.
There's another.
I have zero issue with any of that.
I don't either. Is there, we have liability on that? Or does he have coverage? If something happens?
Other than
You're
that.
starting to sound like me. I just know in the past, I have seen lots of mounds like this, and I was just wondering if there's anything that we can do as a town to just go out and kind of fix up that area so there's not so many big guts and whatever dips, I don't know, whatever you want to call those things.
Ruts.
Rivets, yeah, rivets, I don't know. I know, just a thought. But, so we can just say that we don't need to vote
Postponing.
on postponing
Yeah.
it, do we? We can just say
Just
Postpone.
postpone.
Yeah.
postpone, okay,
Okay.
but no vote. Okay,
Is that right? No vote.
Make a motion to postpone it.
Okay.
Move to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
all right, we got a first and second to postpone indefinitely. All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Ayes have it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. You have motion to adjourn.
Move, we adjourned.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we have everybody up here. I'll go ahead and call the Finance Committee meeting to order and turn it over to you, Miss Rhonda.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm here to present the February financial report. We have completed 67% of the year. This is my second favorite month to present the financial report. As you can see, we collected a little over 14 million in revenue for the year to bring our year-to-date total of 28, which is 66% of our budget. Our expenses of a little under 4 million, 3.6 million for the month. Our year-to-date of just under 33 million.
Miss, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
On some of that, please?
Sure.
On the, just in the future, since we are gonna be revising or getting a new budget soon, under the miscellaneous revenues, I believe I asked this when I first came onto council as well. If we could, because that's always seems to be a lot of income that we have in that miscellaneous revenues category. And one of the common questions I've had many times on council is what's in there, and you've always told me what's in there. But if going forward, when you're setting your line items in the budget, if you can please outline that a little bit more for the public to see and council to see, because that is always seems to be a bigger revenue.
On page 3.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
This is the summary page. So yes, it does look like a big number.
That's right. Yeah. I think it was maybe under the air. That's right. And
so-
then,
Okay.
well, I'll ask you the other questions when we get a little bit further along.
Okay. After the revenue and expenses, the transfers are the transfers in from the hospitality fund. So for the month, we were at positive 11 million, and year to date still a negative 1.9 million. So we've collected most of our property tax revenues, which I'll get to in just a moment. I'll go to the revenues. Okay, this is the detail of the revenues that on the summary page. The first category is property taxes. We collected just about 13.5 million for the month, most of which is real property. This is most of what we'll collect for the year. We'll have a little bit coming in for the remaining months, but not much. And year to date is 19 million. We are just over our budgeted total. We'll get vehicle taxes will come in right about where our budget is, and I believe homestead will as well. So we may be over right about maybe 8%. I need to dig into that number a little more. I haven't had a chance. I think most of that came from the Berkeley County assessments. I looked at our Dorchester County assessments on what we collected, and we looked to be right on that. But I will dig into that to make sure I know exactly what the components are and where it looked like. License permits and fees. We collected 482,000. Our year to date is 3.3 or 19% of our budget. Again, this is where business licenses are. I don't expect this to come up until will come up some in April and the majority in May and June. Courts and fines, we collected 21,000 for the month, a total of 188, which is 69% of our budget. State revenues collected a little over 300,000, mainly all in local option sales tax, total of just under 3.5 million. We've collected 78% of our budget, and that's because some of the quarterly payments have already come in. Parks and Rec, we collected 42,000 this month for year to date of 361, or 92% of our budget. The miscellaneous revenues, these are various items. We've collected 306,000 for the month and a little over 2 million for year to date. We have, I'm trying to look and see, sale of assets, of course, is more than we budgeted. And right now interest income is 2. That will adjust when I allocate some of that interest to the other funds. As far as transfers goes, local hospitality of our 300 and year to date, just almost 2.5 million. Any questions on that?
What is the miscellaneous income is that we have? What is that? Just the variety of things that we have in that column? What would be items that we would have coming in and that miscellaneous income that we had budgeted for 100,000?
I don't even,
Just examples. I didn't know if you had examples.
we've only collected 15,000 in that category.
Right, but we
Yeah,
budgeted 100,
budgeted
so I
100.
didn't know if we came up with that 100,000 because of the past, what we would
Probably the
normally.
past. Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head what items might be in that particular category, but I can find out.
I mean, because it would appear that we lost a lot of money coming in there if, or not a lot, but 85,000 if we normally considered budgeting 100, but we've only collected.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. And I'll definitely look and see what we have in that category.
And then buildings and grounds, if we're already at 93% of our budget, do you expect that to end up going?
So part of it is insurance. We pay 2 installments of our property insurance. So we pay in July and in January. So we paid 100% of our insurance premium throughout the year. To make that even a bigger number, we had a roughly a $200,000 increase over what we budgeted for our insurance. So not only have we paid 100%, we paid $200,000 more. So
We'll be over budget that.
on that item. That along with streetlights, which we may be over on that, the electricity. That is a big item there.
So we may be at 130, 140% of our budget then on that one item.
We could. So insurance, we won't have any more. So it'll just be some of the other regular items
Yeah.
On that.
And then the capital expenditures that we're only at 25% of our budget on, but we have so many capital expenditures. Is that just?
And I believe there were some, maybe police vehicles that they haven't got their hands on yet. They're a part of that. I can't remember I haven't checked off the line items to see, which ones we have not received yet.
And if we don't meet that, since we're only at 25% of our budget and 67% of the year, if we don't meet that, that just goes back into one big fund. It doesn't roll over to more capital expenditures, right?
Not how we have it presently set up.
Okay. And then under the beverage license for state revenues, we budgeted 100,000 and we've only, collected 27,000. That's state revenue. So how do we determine, like we set that budget number and, we have more beverage establishments, I feel like in the town or in the city of Somerville limit. So how does that?
I believe that we get that typically this time of year. I can't remember when the exact cycle is. And if I remember correctly, it might be a 2-year kind of off-phone beverage license. Some years are higher than others. But I felt like this was pretty conservative. So I will go back and look at the exact history, but I'm thinking that comes from the state in the spring.
Okay.
I'll look at that. Oh,
I thought I remembered us getting more last year.
yes, we definitely did.
That's all. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else, questions, comments? Okay. Next is impact fees. I have a total of, we have Parks and Rec, Fire and Municipal. Year to date, we've collected just under $2.6 million in impact fees. Our expenses are a little over 700 for a net of right at 1.9 million. Again, we have most of the municipal are allocated to the public service and public safety building with Creech and Associates. Any questions on impact fees? Next is hospitality and accommodations. We collected a little over $400,000 for the current period. Year to date at 44 million, we're 65%. The collections in February are from sales in January. January is typically a slower month, so it'll be a lesser amount typically. The expenses included a debt payment, which is why our current period shows a deficit. And year to date, we have just under 190,000 revenues over expenses for hospitality. Accommodations, we collected 27. We expended the 15,000. That was our share of the sculpture that we paid to Miss Susie Chisholm for the sculpture y'all approved can't remember the name now, last month. Any questions on any of that? Lastly is stormwater. We also collected a good portion of our stormwater fees this month. We collected 1.6 million, expenditures are 94,000, a net for the month of 1.5. Year to date, we have a 1.1 excess. Again, we've collected, most of our fees have been collected, and we will hopefully at least get our $128,000 fund balance contribution for the year. Any other questions on any of those items?
Any other question, council members? No, thank you, Ms. Rhonda.
I would like to introduce Miss Emily Zobak from Green Finney. She's going to present our 6/30/24 audit. We will have hard copies for y'all. They're in the mail. And I will certainly supply you all with her contact information, because I want any of you to feel, if you feel uncomfortable or want to ask her anything, she's always obliged in helping us. And we appreciate all the work that her team did in helping us get this completed. Emily.
Good evening.
Thank
you. I'm Emily Sobchak. I'm with Green Finney Colley, and I'm here to present the results of the audit, the financial statement audit for the year ended June 30th, 2024. If you have questions as I'm going through, please feel free to jump in, or I can also take questions at the end. So before we get into the financial results, it's important that you remember that the financial statements are the responsibility of the town. And so it's important that the town has good policies and procedures in place to mitigate the risk of misstatement in that financial information. Because we know that you are relying on the year-end audited financials, but you're also relying on the monthly information that you're receiving at your monthly meetings. And so having good internal controls allows you to safely rely on that information. Our responsibility as your auditor is to audit the financial information provided and issue an opinion based on our audit. We have issued an unmodified opinion again this year. That's a clean opinion. That's an opinion that you want. That opinion provides reasonable assurance that the financial statements are materially correct. So reasonable assurance is a high level of assurance, but it's not absolute. We're not looking at every single transaction that occurred during the year. We're also using materiality in determining our audit procedures. So let's look at your general fund. You had an increase in fund balance of 4 million, bringing total fund balance as of June 30th to 28.8 million. Included in that is non-spendable fund balance of 504,000. So those amounts have already been spent, things like prepaid expenses. The money is out the door, but you won't recognize the expense until fiscal 25. You also have restricted fund balance. That represents your unspent lease proceeds that are designated for the fire truck. And you have committed fund balance of 5 million for disaster recovery. That is committed in accordance with council's policy. We then have assigned fund balance of 2.1 million. That represents the amount that was used to balance the fiscal 25 budget. So then we're left with unassigned fund balance of 20.4 million. That unassigned fund balance represents 43% of your fiscal 2024 operating revenues. We compare that to the town's policy, which is a minimum of 30%. And then we have the policy recommendation provided by the Government Finance Officers Association. That's a national organization. And they provide a generic recommendation for all local governments that you should always have at least 2 months, or about 17% of your operating expenditures in that unassigned fund balance. There are a number of different reasons why having that fund balance is important. One very significant one is that we're measuring fund balance as of June 30th, but your property tax revenues don't start coming in until usually about January. So you have 6 months of cash flow needs to meet that having fund balance available allows you to do so without having to issue short-term debt. Having a healthy fund balance also allows you to achieve better interest rates when you do issue debt, and it allows you more flexibility in determining how future non-recurring or capital expenditures are funded. So let's look at your revenues for the year. They totaled just under 47 million. That was a 16% increase from the prior year, as you did see increases in your property tax revenues as well as your business licenses and permits. You also came in 18% better than what you had budgeted. And in addition to your operating revenues, we also report transfers in the general fund of about 4.2 million, as well as some proceeds from the sale of assets. On the expenditure side, expenditures totaled 47.1 million. That was a 4% increase from the prior year and about 4% ahead of what you had budgeted. We look now, if we combine all of your governmental funds together, so your general fund plus the special revenue funds, we're looking at total revenues and other financing sources of 75.9 million compared to total expenditures of 69.1 million. Now, when we look at your governmental funds, we focus on current assets and current liabilities, but we also report the government-wide financial statements that include your long-term assets and obligations. So we'll look at your long-term assets, your capital assets. They totaled 133.9 million. And the activity in there was depreciation expense of 6 million that was offset by your additions for the year. Some of the more significant additions were the continued construction on the North Maple Street extension. That project cost as of June 30th reached 11.8 million. And the completion of Fire Station 6, which came at a project cost of 4 million. That fire station was added to your depreciable assets during the year. Looking next at long-term debt, we have total long-term obligations of 45.4 million. That was a decrease from the prior year as a result of your scheduled principal payments, as well as some amortization of some debt premiums. For fiscal 25, we're looking at debt service requirements of 3.6 million. And then we also report compensated absences, which is earned but unused vacation leave of 1.4 million. In addition to the more traditional long-term obligations of, your typical debt, we also continue to report your net pension liability. This relates to your participation in the state retirement system. And it's important to remember that this liability is not a direct liability of the town. And so while that is a significant number, 40.2 million, it is not a liability that you're expected to write a check to pay off. Rather, it represents your proportionate share of the total unfunded actuarial liability of the system. And since it's not a direct liability, it doesn't have any impact on your cash flows or your operating budget. But what does impact those is the employer contribution rates that are mandated by the state. Those rates have been increasing for over 10 years now. We reached rates of 18.5% and 21.2% for fiscal 24. Those rates have frozen at those rates, 18.5% and 21.2% for fiscal 25. And we don't currently foresee any future increases. However, we also don't expect those rates to come down. And so it's very important when you're making personnel decisions that you're considering not only the impact of salaries, but also the impact of fringe benefits. In addition to the financial statement audit this year, we also performed the single audit. That's the additional compliance audit that's required by the federal government in any year that you have federal expenditures greater than $750,000. We did again look at the state and local fiscal recovery funds. Those funds were funded through the ARPA legislation. And I'm pleased to say we have no findings related to the single audit. We also had no financial statement findings this year. So that really reflects on the hard work that Rhonda and her team are doing day in, day out throughout the year in ensuring that things are done properly and properly reported. In addition to your financial statements, we also issue a management letter each year. So I would encourage you to read through that. It mainly includes required communications from us to management and to council. And so certainly if you have any questions as you look through that, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have at this time.
I just have one question before we move forward. You said the government recommends about 2 months, 16.7% or something like that for fund balance. We have approximately 30%. How does that compare with other municipalities that you guys work with?
Great question. It can be hard sometimes to make direct comparisons because different entities can have very different fund balance policies. I would say that y'all are in a good, healthy condition. I would not recommend reducing your policy because, as I'm sure Rhonda can attest to, your fund balance as it's measured at June 30th looks a lot different than it probably looks in November or December when you're waiting those last few days for the property tax revenues to come in. And so when making any fund balance policy changes, or when determining what is an ideal fund balance that you want to maintain, it's important to consider what does that fund balance look like right before your property tax revenues coming in, to ensure that you maintain a level that you're not in a position of having to issue short-term financing to fund the cash flow needs.
Thank you. Great answer. Appreciate it.
Any other questions, council? Thank you, Emily. Appreciate you being there.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to work with the town.
The next item on the agenda is looking at the financing options for our public safety facility. One of the goals in looking at some of these options was to identify some legally available sources of repayment for debt to minimize reliance on any general fund revenues. Obviously, we're always under pressure with the budget time, so we're kind of in the middle of it now. So we don't have a lot of extra general fund revenues out there to fund additional debt. So I wanted to kind of go over the thought process and look the hierarchy of what we looked at. The first section is basically cash up front. We have approximately 10 million in the 22 bond issuance fund that we can use towards this public safety facility. We also have estimated approximately 5.5 million for sale of assets. I know you have some things you're looking at. We have some other pieces of property we may be able to sell to raise that kind of capital. We may want to look at taking $2 million out of our fund balance to put towards this project as well. That gives us a total of 17.5 in cash that we can put as a down payment, as you will, for this project. That leaves 44.5 million in financing that we need to look at. We have spoken with our financial advisor, David Cheatwood, and one of the flexible vehicles that he recommended is called an installment purchase revenue bond. Using this kind of revenue bond, we can use any legally available source of revenue. And council can decide each year to use different kinds of revenue. So the makeup and the composition of the revenues available can change from year to year. So we look at impact fees as maybe one of the first things we would look at. If we had approximately 1.2 million in revenues, we could fund 19.8 in debt. That's on I believe it's 30-year, about 5% is what we talked about. The TIF borrowings, our TIF district it has strong revenues in the TIF district. So we can take 1.4 million in revenues there and fund $15 million worth of debt. We can look at A-tax to maybe fund the cost of the parking garage. So we can use some revenues from A-tax that we haven't typically budgeted. That would fund roughly about 6.5 million worth of debt. Then we're left with 3.2 million. We can do an analysis of some of the expenses that we fund with general fund now that can possibly be moved to hospitality tax and free up $214,000 in revenue that we can use to fund the additional 3.2 million in debt. So that gives us, total revenues that we need to look for is 3.3 million. This is very, obviously these can change. These are our initial estimates, but certainly this particular scenario does not put a lot of pressure on the general fund to be able to need to fund debt on this project. Yes, sorry, that will be annual.
Would we always be able to use the fire and municipal impact fees to pay the bond always going forward?
As long as it comes in. Now, I would never stand up here and tell you that we're going to have 1.2 million every single year for the next 30 years, because I don't know. We had in 2023 and total impact fees, we had 1.3 million, 2024, 1.5, and this year, 2025, we have 2.6. Without Parks and Rec, piece of that is 2.3 million. Now, again, there's Sawmill, there's some other big developments. If developments come to a halt, that is obviously going to come to a halt. So I'm glad you brought that up because what I wanted to say about impact fees is of all these, that is the riskiest category of revenue that we're dependent on. So that has risk in it, which is why, for information purposes, I put the millage equivalent. If impact fees went to zero, and I don't really expect that to happen, and you had to leverage a debt millage, it would be 3.86. Okay, now we're talking about 30 years. So it is a decision now, but it is a big picture.
And this A tax and H tax potential revenues is then going to take away from what we're currently used. So
No,
this is in
no.
addition to.
Right. A-tax right now is not budgeted for any recurring typical expenses at all. I think you all have approved some expenses out of there, but very little over the last couple of years that I've seen. Oh, that's right.
So-
I'm sorry. We did just approve the barricades out of there.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. I was about to say, didn't we just?
Yeah.
But it's not budgeted. We haven't budgeted any recurring expenses out of it.
Yeah.
So if, if we do this new building and police and fire, they need other items, then where would that come from? Like we just paid for the police barricades out of some of this money that was not budgeted. Like where would we pay for the other items that they needed?
I hope we'll have some robust capital fund in the next year or two that we rely on. I mean, that's a question. I mean, we're going to have more operating expenses on from that facility too. I mean, obviously it'll cost more.
Uh-huh,
The impact fees are economy dependent.
right.
So if the economy keeps perking along the way it has been, and we would, as growth continues to come in, we would expect those impact fee numbers to continue to grow. Same thing for accommodation status. These are all of these are the TIF as well. All of those are economically dependent revenue. So the more growth we have, the better the economy goes, the more revenue we'll have. But this is a bare minimum.
The TIF borrowings are based on property taxes. So that is less subject to economic environment than some of the others are. But yes, I'm going to do that. So there's two other things. One thing that we don't have a feel for, but we want to pursue. I don't know what dollars it will bring. Is there some cash credits that can be achieved by energy efficiencies in a building? And so we will pursue that, but I don't have any idea what that means. So that will certainly help in some fashion. Maybe that'll help in $3.2 million enough, and we don't have to worry about, that segment. But I want to come back to this, but I want to show you one slide and then come back to this. Next slide. So because this is a 30-year project, I also wanted to look at the debt that we currently have and when is it rolling off and what does this free up? And 10 to 12 years, it sounds like a lot to me right now, but it's really not. And when you talk about financing this project, so we have significant, our GO bond debt rolls off in 12 years. That's $445,000. The lease purchase, that's a total of $400,000 that within half, some of it comes off in 1 year, the other part in 6. The hospitality debt, it comes off in 10, and the franchise fee pledge of 1.1 million comes off in 10 years as well. So you have significant resources that will roll off, in the next 10 years.
Aren't those lease purchase, isn't that 2 fire trucks right now?
It's one fire truck was in one of those, yes.
So we'll need another fire truck.
We're always going to need.
Yeah,
another fire
so
truck.
we're gonna keep, even though it's gonna keep reoccurring.
Well, it is, but and maybe a fire truck we do on lease purchase, and I don't know how we end up financing some of our other capital assets. That's probably a different discussion. But I just kind of wanted to demonstrate that, we do have obligations now that will be rolling off, a third of the way through this debt repayment, should we choose to do this.
Let me ask you, if we did had an annexation plan put in place for that was aggressive, maybe. Would we have to have, do we have plenty of expansion available with our police and fire? That they can still service a lot more, or if we did some annexation, we would have to then build another fire station and a police station relatively soon.
I'm sure there's probably a
Yeah.
fire station already in the, in the works, because I think there is in a few years down the road. And I think as we annex, yes, there always going to be need to expand our services.
But can these hold more? Like, is it by law, am I allowed to ask?
Yeah.
Chief, is with our current, I think there's a miles, within so many miles, the fire stations can serve, right? Or residents? Is the what? Okay.
Need for a fire station.
But this would serve for a while. This location would serve more residents for a while. Do you understand am I asking? Do y'all understand what I'm saying or no?
I'm sorry, I misinterpreted. You mean this new public safety?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
It's going to serve the same amount of people that we have now.
But could it serve more? So if we annex to pay, will it be able to serve, to help pay offset and pay for itself in my mind?
It's built for growth. And I don't know what.
It has pop-out ability for about another 10,000, much more tens of thousands of square feet into the future that will be built. You can move to the rear and to the front.
Okay.
Certain space.
But new impact fees that we collect from growth, I think this is what you're asking, could be used potentially for
This site and not have to then build another site, right? Like this could serve more homes. Do y'all understand?
I think what you're talking asking is can this fire station itself serve more people from where it is? Is that?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think this fire station is going to serve, as the chief said, the same district as it serves right now, but you'll have more space for admin staff, support staff within the building that we don't have now over there. That'll help support future growth from the idea of a command staff, so to speak, or support staff for the firefighters. But as far as where the fire truck that's sitting in this fire station goes, it won't go any further than where it's going right now.
Okay. Thank
That
you.
makes sense.
Sorry, I've made that complicated. I couldn't get that out right.
Some of my preliminary analysis, I believe, showed we have approximately 30% more square footage than what we have now, which, will give us more capacity and more room for growth that we don't have now. Any other questions, comments?
Other questions on the financing? I appreciate the work you've done to demonstrate a pathway to meet this need. It's certainly a large undertaking, especially because we delayed decision-making. I'm excited to get the engineer and the contractor engaged in value engineering opportunities and see if we can sharpen the 62, if at all possible, while also maybe you have underestimated the sale of real estate, which is okay. I appreciate you being conservative, but we have the opportunity to improve that, as well as when the complex is completed, we have the Dominion property, which will not only be able to be sold as an economic development opportunity, but will generate revenue as it's developed in both impact fees as well as tax base, commercial, and whatever ends up going there. So I think there's a logical path forward that makes sense to me. So I'm excited.
And these are estimates, so we're still refining. I mean, I don't know, but these are general categories that we feel like we can work with.
And the Nexton impact fees can pay for this. It doesn't have to pay for a fire station in Nexton, correct? Is that right?
Some of it, yes, but as Councilmember Waring suggested, our response times will need a physical facility in Nexton. There's property that's been set aside in the Hoyer track for public safety. So at some point, we would have to anticipate building in there and using those impact fees for that new facility.
How long are we? Like 10 years, 5 years, do you think?
10 years.
Okay.
Yeah, that,
It's something that we had, that we were talking earlier, it's sooner than later, but the discussion needs to be starting really right now.
Well, and to that end, you're gonna see these numbers a lot more often. And we're gonna be talking about this because if we want to stay on schedule, then we're gonna have to start making decisions by the end of this year, this calendar year, on pulling the trigger on some of these things. And again, depending on how the economy's going at the time, will determine how confident we are in these estimates going forward. But I want to reemphasize what Rhonda has put up here on the screen. The $3.86 million, the 3.86 mils is the backstop. Your ability to issue debt and pay for it with millage is the backstop for the worst case scenario. So as we're talking about this and moving forward, you need to make sure you keep that in the back of your mind that that's the default. And if push comes to shove, that's where it's possible that may be where we'll have to turn. I just want to make sure everybody understands that, and that if it ever happens, there are no surprises if the staff has to come to you with that. So we're going to try to avoid that, but that's always a possibility.
One more thing that I wanted to explain for all you math whizzes. 1.2 million in impact fees that funds $19 million in debt versus 1.4 million in TIF TIF revenue that funds 15. The reason that is an inverse relationship is because the term is shorter. That debt can only be out there for the term of the TIF and not for a full 30 years. So I would ask that question. So I wanted y'all to have the answer.
that's what I
Are
think.
we-
Oh, go ahead.
Lastly, are we maximizing the interest gained on the money that we keep in our general fund? Do we have someone that manages or makes sure that we're maximizing our interest?
Right now, it is basically short-term in our LGIP with the state treasurer. There doesn't seem to be a lot of reward for going out with duration and long-term. Now, that is one thing that I would like to get someone, probably David Cheatwood, but I would like to get someone to kind of look at everything and see if there are some long-term vehicles that we need to be in for our permanent fund balance. You know, we spend most of our money, but there are some resources that we can put out there for maybe 3 to 5 years. It just depends on what our needs are. But right now, the short-term rates are really pretty good.
Yeah, I do think it'd be a good idea to evaluate that though. Thank you.
I like this as well. I think this makes us look that 62 million look a lot closer than what you felt maybe even 2 months ago. But and we also aren't considering things like this. We just had a surplus this past year of fund balance that can be used for a portion thereof can be used for chunk payments of this loan as the debt on this as well that could save us long-term interest payments and things like that. And the development that is going on at Hoyer, I believe that's several hundred homes and businesses and a lot to come over there that of course will help keep that impact fee line item rolling pretty good. So
Right. I mean, like I said, that's the riskiest category if there is one, but I know it won't go away, but will it be volatile? And it could be up and down.
thanks, Ms. Rhonda.
Thank you.
Item D, surplus equipment vehicles request from Parks and Recreation Department. There are two, RM 27, a 1991 1130 case tractor, and R 109, a 2001 Chevy S10 with 171,737 miles.
You approve that?
A second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Item E, authorization to apply for a PARD grant funds for Short Central renovations and a town agreement to provide match resources, request from the Parks and Recreation Department.
Make a motion.
Motion that we've passed this, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All right, motions and a second to approve. All those in favor or any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Item F, authorization to spend up to $286,185 from the general fund balance for a reserve ladder truck. $88,815 was received from the insurance claim from the 2002 Sutphen ladder. This will give us a total of $375,000 to put towards the purchase. Request from Fire and Rescue Department.
Make a motion, we approve that.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Item G, authorization for staff to enter into an agreement with Woodard Agency to move them as the town's group insurance broker. Request from the Human Resources Department.
I'll make a motion, we approve that.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
Yes, did we check prices or how did we come to terms with Woodward Agency to contract with them?
I'll answer that question. The staff has met with a couple of brokers over the last year or so and discussed with them our needs, as I've just talked about at previous meetings, with regard to trying to hold our premium increases as minimal as possible. After having those meetings and then evaluating the Woodard Agency, it was our recommendation that we move forward with allowing them to become our broker in charge.
I know a while back, we had Kenny Plexico acting in that position. Did Kenny retire or he's no longer active in
So
insurance business?
we were with Gallagher. We've previously been with the Gallagher, acting as our broker of record, and we've been with them for 5 years. Chris, is that right? Closer to 10 years we've been with them. And so based on the conversations that we've had, it was my recommendation and desire to want to put a fresh set of eyes on our claims and be able to move forward, try out the Woodard Agency and see if we can get some new looks at our policies and our claims experience and see if we can reduce our claims experience to prevent those increases from getting any bigger than they normally would.
And before you came to that conclusion, how many brokers did you interview?
We'd met with, of course, we had experience with Gallagher. We had met with,
Gallagher, additional brokers, as well as the South Carolina Retirement System, EVA. So a total of, if you include Gallagher, 6 different agencies or suppliers, providers that we talked to in detail with the in-depth presentation.
This is for all insurance or just the
health.
Health
Yeah,
insurance?
just the health.
Yeah. Rhonda had mentioned a little bit ago that our insurance increase and buildings and grounds increased 200,000 that she wasn't expecting. Is that something that we've considered having them or someone else look at?
So that would be a
Those
property and
policies.
liability policy that we would look for property and liability carriers to shop that. Right now, we're with South Carolina Municipal Insurance Risk Fund, which is run by the Municipal Association. It's a pool of close to 150 cities and towns across the state. They are as competitive as the private market. Oftentimes what happens is the private market on the property and liability side, you'll get in, they'll give you a good rate the first couple of 3 years. And then once that contract term is over, then your rates go back to where they normally would be. My experience with Smurf and Smith, not just as having worked for the Municipal Association, but is the loss prevention services that they provide. And matter of fact, the Chief Wright's report, his report card scoring at 98%, the kind of work that they're doing to try and assess risk and help you avoid risk is not something that I think you can get that you're getting from a lot of private carriers, but that's just my experience.
I see. Thank you. That's valuable information.
Would this be effective now or in September when our renewal?
We
date is?
want, this is effective, this would be effective now because we want the Woodard Agency in the office at Blue Cross Blue Shield, scrutinizing our data and getting as much information that they can to share with us about our losses, where they are, and then making recommendations for how we can improve our program. So our renewal is in October, but we want them working as hard as possible between now and the renewal so that we can make sure that increase doesn't go up any higher.
So do all the brokers use the same underwriters, or does Woodward have access to different underwriters?
So initially, any broker that we went with would take over the existing book, the existing carrier. Certain ones and Woodard is one in particular where they have a relationship with certain individuals high up in Blue Cross as far as that goes.
Okay.
Whoever had it would still, it would be Blue Cross initially.
So there's no immediate savings in premiums then?
No.
Okay.
No.
So the advantage from what you can see is that we'd have additional scrutiny and eyes on
I think we
spending
are,
habits essentially?
if the Woodard Agency delivers what they've expressed to us, then they are going to deliver to us better quality data that they will be able to extract and help us make decisions on where we need to concentrate our efforts to reduce our claims experience. This is not a long-term commitment. Doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. We can change a broker when we need to, if we need to. But I think it's a good thing, just like with an auditor, have a fresh set of eyes, look at these really expensive programs that we're paying for our employees, and confident that Woodard is going to be able to help us in the short term, for sure.
So any premium savings would be in future years?
Yes. Well, yes. Premium savings in terms of, instead of going up by $50, it might only go up $25.
Understanding.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had some discussion at the mid-year budget about like an in-house clinic. Has there been any more discussion or thought about the advantages or disadvantages of doing
Yes,
that?
that is something that we are aspiring to and want to get to. And Woodard is doing this for other entities across the state already. I know that Gallagher has some experience with that as well. As I think we talked about, we took a field trip to Florence County and met with their officials and went through their clinic. Very successful, very happy. We're not there yet. I think what we want to do is, with their help, get a hold and a handle on our claims experience so that we can make sure that when we do stand up a clinic, that we're providing the services that will keep people from having to go to more expensive options.
Right. And that's, I guess, thank you for that segue. So is part of the problem with our claims that we have employees using, for example, the emergency room as their primary care instead of going to a primary care doctor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And I have a question. So I'm assuming that we're paying them a fee, and is this like a year type contract fee?
There is, any broker that would represent us, it's the same thing. They take a percentage. There is a percentage of the premium that is assessed for the fee that pays whatever broker.
The commission structure is the same.
Okay. So Gallagher that we have right now, we've already prepaid them? Or do we?
It's a month per month.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even though if we're going to take Woodward, that would stop.
Correct.
Our contract just ends with them. Okay. So we're not losing any money. Okay.
Correct.
One Gallagher's in 1 month and Woodard beginning first.
All right.
And as far as the employees go, it's seamless. We're still under Blue Cross Blue Shield. The administration is nobody's really going to notice, except for the fact that whenever Woodard comes into town hall and is going to be interviewing department heads, they're going to be eventually working with employees to make recommendations and get information about them and what are some of the programs that we as a town can implement that will help them achieve healthy outcomes. So I'm looking forward to that activity.
What's the process for breaking up with our current broker?
We've notified Gallagher that it's our intent to break up with them, and we have asked Woodard to come on as our broker of record. This, based on the conversations that we've had about this change, we've asked them to move forward with that. What I wanted to do by putting this item on the agenda tonight was just to get your acknowledgement and understanding and blessing that this is something that we're intending to move forward with.
So I imagine what you're saying is you'll get something, maybe like an Excel spreadsheet or something that would show you how many people had office visits and flu shots, and you'll be able to take that data and then say, well, can we open a clinic for
It's
this?
we're
So is that what I'm imagining? Is that what you're
Our
imagining?
expectation is that we're going to get our hands on data that we've not had previously, and that is going to help us make decisions for the future.
And do we know that the commission that they're getting on each of the policies, and I know that probably comes out of the premium, but is it the same with Gallagher as it is Woodward or Woodard
It is, yes.
Works the same.
with any company? I guess that's state law or something. I don't.
I'm sure it's capped.
Sure.
By the
Okay.
Any other questions on this item?
And one final question, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Are our claims out of line with other municipalities our size? Are we doing something right or wrong that other municipalities are not doing?
I think that's what we want to find out.
Understood. Thank you.
Would this report be provided to council when y'all get it?
Yes, just understand that it's going to be aggregate data for the most part. We won't know none of us will know the identities of individual employees or their family members that are on the plan. But yes, we will have access to this, all this data. Yep.
Well, I just want to say thank you to staff for proactively trying to reduce the increase in premiums. I guess if we were working with someone for a decade and we didn't feel confident in them during renewal, that we must be in good hands. So thank you for that. No other discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Item H, authorization for Chief Wright to sign a memorandum of understanding on deputization of law enforcement officers as Secret Service Task Force officers between the Somerville Police Department and United States Secret Service.
Move for approval of the MOU.
All right, motion and a second to approve the MOU. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Real quick, a couple of items I want to talk about with you. First of all, remember we're holding our next budget meeting next Wednesday, the 19th. We're going to try and do it here in our training room here right below us. We've got the training room back. GW and Carrie have finally been able to vacate that and move back into their office. Thank goodness. So that'll be available to us. We will present to you the first draft of the fiscal year 26 budget. We had meetings with department heads, Rhonda and Dan and I today, and then it's a full day of department head meetings tomorrow with those first passes at their proposed budgets. One thing that we are working towards across all the town departments is contract consolidation. And I'll give you an example. Multiple departments across the town had their own contracts or were calling their own separate heating and air service company. And so you had multiple different companies coming and working on everybody's facilities because that's who they knew and were comfortable with it. And one of the things that I'm trying to do, would like to try and do, is consolidate as many of those types of functions under a single contract as we can. And so Frank has been working on the heating and air contract consolidation, and I appreciate all the department heads who have had input into that process and have been willing to participate. So that is one of the latest things that we're doing to try and find some efficiencies and maybe even some savings for our operations. And hopefully we'll be able to do more of those kinds of things. We'll look for opportunities to do that as we keep going. And the other thing, one of the things that I've been working with the staff to do, particularly here at Town Hall, is to maximize the tools that we have already at our fingertips. Most immediately being the Citizen Serve software that we use to process applications, to receive information from people who are making applications, from building permits to rezoning requests, to you name it. As I've been talking to department heads and other staff members, turns out that a lot of folks who are new to the town within the last number of years since we purchased Citizen Serve software, is they've never really gotten any formal training on that, and they're all kind of self-taught. And in doing that, they aren't necessarily aware of how the effects or how much more smoothly our permitting processes can be if we have some understanding of the effect that my action of taking action or not in my part of Citizen Serve will have later on down the road in the process, and vice versa, or what the workflow is. So one of the things that we're going to do is undertake some Citizen Serve training on that software, so that everybody who uses it understands what its capabilities are and how best to use it. And then as a part of that, we are going to make sure that everybody understands how the workflow is supposed to move, and how they are integrated into the larger picture rather than just at their particular department level. So I can't compliment the staff enough on giving me this feedback and then helping me understand where it is we think we can make improvements, not only for our work, but for obviously the residents and people who are coming and seeking services from the town. So just want to let you know that those are still some things that I'm doing as your administrator to evaluate where we are operationally, and trying to seek improvements with the help and the enthusiasm from the staff to do a better job for you and the residents. So happy to take any questions about those items or anything else.
Can we put a link to Citizen Serve on the front page of the website? It is there.
Yes.
It's on the icon on the very first page. Okay.
Yeah.
Go below the search bar.
I've totally missed that one.
It's not easy to see that.
Maybe
I
it's
don't,
going 3 deep in the building
Gotta-
department.
You gotta scroll down on the page there.
Okay.
Icons, we have it right there. We have there's a few spots.
Okay.
Like that. That's probably the most prominent one.
I'll look a little harder. Thank you.
Yeah.
the consolidating contracts, are those like annual contracts that the staff, like different departments have
Could be.
with
Yep.
different companies? And
Yep.
so through that consolidation, you'll be able to see if there's any type of money savings, financial savings by doing that.
That's the idea, is to try and get, squeeze more services, squeeze discounts out of a larger use, a wider use across all the town departments rather than just one department using a particular tool.
I wouldn't be opposed, and if you do consolidate contracts and you're able to come with a quantitative measurable number, I don't know if you were opposed to it. I mean, maybe bonusing back out to the staff members, like a certain savings amount of whatever that savings was from that consolidation.
That would be up to y'all as a policy matter. So happy to talk about that when we get to that point.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And that was not to sit you down, Scott. We appreciate you as well.